The Valorian hegemony had watched Earth for a very long time. From their great ships that floated among the stars, they pointed their sensors at that small blue planet and studied the creatures that lived there. What they saw confused them. What they saw made them laugh. The humans lived on a world that should have killed them. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere burned with oxygen, a gas so dangerous that it could make metal rust and turn fire into a hungry beast. The temperature changed wildly, from burning hot to freezing cold. Massive storms tore across the surface. The oceans were filled with monsters. The land crawled with predators that had teeth and claws and poison. And yet, somehow, the humans survived. Senior observer Felvon had spent 30 years studying these strange creatures. He sat in his comfortable chair aboard the observation station and shook his head at what he saw on his screens. They built cities and then destroyed them. They created beautiful things and terrible weapons. They climbed their highest mountains and dove into their deepest oceans. They split the atom and walked on their own moon. They are insane, Felvon wrote in his reports. A species forged in chaos. They know nothing but struggle. When the hegemony finally made contact, they expected the humans to be grateful. The Valorians were an ancient civilization. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their ships could crack planets open like eggs. Surely these primitive Deathworlders would bow before such power. The first meeting took place on a space station at the edge of human territory. Ambassador Felvon led the Valorian delegation. He was tall and thin, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. His 4 eyes looked down at the human representatives with barely hidden disgust. The humans smiled at him. In Valorian culture, showing teeth was a threat, but the humans did it while offering their hands in greeting. They did it while serving food and drink. They did it while speaking soft words of welcome. "We are honored to meet you," said the human leader, a woman named Sarah Chen. She was small by Valorian standards, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. "We hope this is the beginning of a long friendship." Felvon almost laughed. Friendship? The hegemony did not make friends. They made subjects. "The hegemony requires tribute," Felvon announced. 10% of your mineral production, 20% of your food surplus, access to your shipyards. He waited for the outrage. He waited for the threats. He had seen 100 species react to these demands with anger and defiance. The hegemony always crushed them afterward, but at least they showed some spirit before they died. "We can arrange that." Felvon blinked all 4 of his eyes. "You accept?" "Peace is worth any price," Chen said. Her smile never wavered. "We are not a warlike people, Ambassador. We have seen enough violence on our own world. We have no desire to bring it to the stars." Over the next 50 years, humanity proved those words true. When the hegemony demanded more tribute, humanity paid it. When the hegemony claimed 3 border systems that held human colonies, humanity relocated those colonists without protest. When Valorian ships accidentally destroyed a human cargo vessel, humanity sent only a polite note expressing sadness at the loss of life. The galactic community watched in amazement. Some species pitied the humans, others mocked them. The Kreth, a warrior race who had fought the hegemony for centuries, sent a message to Earth asking if humanity needed assistance. The human response was simple. "Thank you for your concern. We are fine." They did not seem fine. They seemed broken. Felvon eventually returned to the hegemony homeworld and presented his final assessment to the High Council. The Great Chamber was filled with the most powerful Valorians in the galaxy. They sat on floating platforms of crystal and light, looking down at him with eager eyes. "The humans are no threat," Felvon declared. "Their world broke them before they ever reached the stars. They have a military, yes, but it has never mobilized. Not once in 50 years. They build ships, but only for trade and exploration. They have weapons, but they gather dust in storage. "You are certain?" asked Supreme Commander Velcrath. He was old and scarred, a veteran of 100 campaigns. Deathworlders are unpredictable. "I am certain," Felvon replied. "I have studied them for decades. They are traumatized creatures who want only to be left alone. Their compliance is not strategy. It is surrender. They learned long ago that fighting leads only to suffering. So they chose not to fight at all." The council murmured in approval. This was good news. Humanity controlled valuable territory. Their world was rich in resources. Their colonies sat on strategic positions that the hegemony had long desired. "Then perhaps," Velcrath said slowly, "it is time to stop asking for tribute and simply take what we want." None of the council members disagreed. Far away, on the planet called Earth, Sarah Chen sat in a room buried deep beneath a mountain. She was older now, her hair gray, and her face lined with years of careful waiting. Around her sat the Joint Chiefs of humanity's military forces. On the screen before them played the recording of Felvon's assessment. They had intercepted it easily. Valorian encryption was a joke to human intelligence agencies. When the recording ended, one of the generals spoke. "They bought it." "They actually bought it," Chen nodded slowly. 50 years. We asked for 50 years of peace, and they gave it to us. 50 years to build, 50 years to prepare, 50 years to become something they cannot imagine. She stood and walked to a window that looked out on a vast underground chamber. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with ships and weapons and soldiers. This was just one of dozens of such facilities hidden across human space. The hegemony had never found them. They had never even thought to look. "They see our silence and think we are afraid," Chen said quietly. "They see our compliance and think we are weak. They look at our world and see only death and suffering. They do not understand what that death and suffering created." She turned back to her officers. "Humanity did not survive a death world by being weak. We survived by being patient, by planning, by remembering every threat and preparing for every danger. The hegemony thinks they know us, but they have only seen what we wanted them to see." Her eyes were hard as steel. "When they come for us, and they will come, they will learn the truth. They will learn what a death world actually produces." Outside the window, a massive warship hung in its construction cradle. Its hull was black as night, covered in weapons that used physics the hegemony thought impossible. Its name was painted on the side in simple white letters. UNSS Wrath of Terra. Sarah Chen looked at it and smiled. Let them come. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Valorian hegemony was the largest building in the known galaxy. It floated in space above the Valorian homeworld, a massive structure of crystal and metal that could hold 1 million beings. Today it was full. Representatives from 100 conquered species sat in their designated sections, watching the great stage at the center of the hall. Cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting this moment to every corner of the galaxy. Supreme Commander Velcrath walked to the center of the stage. He moved slowly, enjoying the attention. His scales had been polished until they gleamed like jewels. His uniform was covered in medals from wars that had ended before most species in the hall were born. He was old, but his eyes were sharp and cruel. Behind him, a holographic image appeared. It showed a small blue planet spinning in the darkness of space. Earth. "Fellow citizens of the hegemony," Velcrath began. His voice was carried by speakers to every corner of the hall. "For too long, we have tolerated the human infestation at the edge of our territory. We have accepted their tribute and allowed them to exist. We showed them mercy." He paused and let his words sink in. "That mercy ends today." The hall erupted in cheers. The Valorians had always hated the humans, though they could not say exactly why. Perhaps it was because the humans came from such an ugly world. Perhaps it was because they multiplied so quickly. Perhaps it was simply because they were different. Velcrath raised his hand for silence. The humans control resources that belong to the hegemony. They occupy worlds that should be ours. They breed and spread like a disease. He turned to look at the image of Earth. I have consulted with the High Council, and we have reached a decision. Another holographic image appeared, showing the hegemony's war fleet. 12,000 ships, each one capable of destroying cities with a single shot. They stretched across space like a swarm of metal insects. The human species is hereby sentenced to extinction, Velcrath announced. Their worlds will be cleansed. Their colonies will be purged. Their homeworld will be cracked open and harvested for resources. In 100 solar cycles, there will be no humans left in this galaxy. The cheering was deafening now. Species that had been conquered by the hegemony clapped and shouted, desperate to show their loyalty. The Valorians smiled their thin smiles and accepted the praise. In a small section near the back of the hall, a single human observer sat quietly. His name was James Porter, and he was Earth's official representative to the Galactic Assembly. He was an old man with white hair and a calm face. He did not react to Velcrath's words. He simply watched and listened and remembered. When the ceremony ended, a Valorian official approached him. "You should leave," the official said. "Before the fleet launches, we will give you that much mercy." Porter stood slowly. "Thank you for the warning," he said politely. "I will inform my government." "Do you have anything to say?" the official asked. He seemed disappointed by Porter's calm reaction. "Any last words for your species?" Porter thought for a moment, then he smiled. "Only that I hope Supreme Commander Velcrath enjoys his victory celebration. It will be his last." The official laughed at this. "Humans, even at the end, you cannot accept reality." Porter walked away without another word. He had a message to send. 20 hours later, the declaration of extinction reached Earth. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, across every human colony. Billions of people stopped what they were doing and watched the recording of Velcrath's speech. In cities across the world, there was silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of despair. It was a different kind of silence. The silence of people who had been waiting for something, and that something had finally arrived. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a bunker that had been built in secret over the past 5 decades, Admiral Sarah Chen gathered her commanders. The room was dark, except for the glow of screens showing the hegemony's fleet positions. "Well," said General Marcus Webb, her second-in-command, "they finally did it. The damn fools actually did it." Chen nodded slowly. She had known this day would come. She had planned for it since she was a young officer. Every decision she had made, every tribute she had paid, every insult she had swallowed, had been for this moment. "How long until their fleet reaches our border?" she asked. 3 weeks for the vanguard, 2 months for the main force." Chen turned to her intelligence chief. "Are the Black Archives ready?" "Yes, Admiral. Everything is in position. The Leviathans are powered up and waiting. The automated defense networks are online. The special weapons are armed." Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. 50 years ago, I met a Valorian ambassador who thought humans were broken creatures. I let him believe that. I let them all believe that. Do you know why? Her officers shook their heads. "Because my grandmother taught me something when I was young. She said that the most dangerous enemy is the one you do not take seriously. She said that pride and arrogance have destroyed more armies than any weapon ever made." Chen walked to a large red button on the wall. It was covered by a glass case. She had looked at that button every day for 30 years, waiting for the moment when she could finally press it. "The hegemony thinks they are hunting sheep," she said quietly. "They are about to discover that they have walked into a den of wolves." She broke the glass and pressed the button. Across human space, things began to wake up. Ships that had been hidden inside asteroids powered on their engines. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations revealed their true nature. Soldiers who had trained in secret for their entire lives received orders they had waited decades to hear. On every human world, screens flickered to life. Shen's face appeared, broadcast to every citizen of Earth and its colonies. For 50 years, we have endured insults and demanded nothing. We have paid tribute and asked for nothing. We have been called weak, cowardly, and broken. We allowed this because we needed time. Time to build, time to prepare, time to become ready for this moment. Her voice grew harder. That time is over. The hegemony has declared war on humanity. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. They expect us to die quietly. She leaned forward. They are wrong. Today I am activating the Human Defense Initiative. Today, every hidden ship launches. Every secret weapon comes online. Every soldier reports for duty. Today, we show the galaxy what we really are. We are not victims. We are not prey. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every single day, and we conquered it. We are the survivors of ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. We are the species that looked at the void of space and said that belongs to us. Her final words were spoken slowly and clearly. The hegemony wanted a war with Deathworlders. They are about to learn exactly what that means. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had pitied humanity or mocked humanity suddenly felt very, very afraid. Something was waking up. Something old and patient and very, very angry. And it was hungry for war. Commander Thelvos stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt like a god. Behind him floated 300 warships of the Valorian hegemony. Each one was a masterpiece of destruction, armed with weapons that could turn cities to glass, and shields that could stop asteroid impacts. This was the Vanguard fleet, sent ahead of the main force to secure the Sol system and prepare for the extermination of humanity. It would be easy, Thelvos thought. The humans had no real military. They had spent 50 years paying tribute and apologizing. They would probably surrender before the first shot was fired. Translation complete, announced his navigation officer. We have arrived in the Sol system. Thelvos looked at the main view screen. He expected to see panic. He expected to see human ships fleeing in terror. He expected to see distress signals and surrender broadcasts. He saw nothing. The Sol system was dark and silent. No beacon signals, no ship traffic, no communication of any kind. The planets hung in the blackness like corpses. Scan the system, Thelvos ordered. Find the humans. His sensor officer worked the controls for several minutes. His scales slowly turned pale, a sign of confusion and growing fear. Commander, I am detecting very little activity. Earth shows normal population signatures, but there is almost no orbital traffic. The human colonies on Mars and the outer moons appear normal. But I cannot find any military vessels. Thelvos frowned. They must be hiding. Cowards. Move the fleet toward Earth. If they will not come to us, we will go to them. The 300 ships began to move. They passed the outer planets without incident. They crossed the asteroid belt and found nothing but rocks and ice. They approached Mars and saw only dome colonies and mining stations. This is too easy, muttered the weapons officer. Where are their defenses? They have none, Thelvos replied confidently. I told you, the humans are broken. They probably think if they hide, we will go away. The fleet crossed the orbit of Mars. They were now in the inner Sol system, approaching Earth. On the view screen, the blue planet grew larger with each passing hour. Then the sensor officer screamed, Commander, the asteroids! They are not asteroids! Thelvos spun around. What are you talking about? The view screen changed to show the space behind the fleet. What had appeared to be a field of ordinary rocks was changing. The asteroids were opening up, revealing machinery hidden inside. Lights flickered to life, engines ignited, weapons ports slid open. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. They hid their fleet inside the asteroid belt, the sensor officer whispered. They hollowed out the rocks and used them as camouflage. We flew right past them and did not notice. The first wave of attack came from Jupiter's moons. Small, fast drones erupted from hidden bases beneath the ice. They had been sleeping there for 50 years, waiting for this moment. Their fusion cores ran cold until they received the activation signal. Now they ran hot, and they were very, very fast. The drones did not attack the Valorian ships directly. That would have been wasteful. Instead, they targeted specific systems: engines, weapons, communication arrays, sensors. They were precise. They were methodical. They were patient. A hegemony cruiser lost its main engines to a swarm of drones that cut through its hull like knives through paper. A destroyer's weapon systems went dark when a single drone dove into its primary power conduit and exploded. A battleship found its shields flickering and dying as something disrupted its power grid from the inside. "Return fire," Felvas screamed. "Destroy them." His ships tried. Their weapons filled space with fire. They destroyed hundreds of drones, then thousands. But there were always more. They came from every direction, from hiding spots that had been prepared decades ago. They came from inside asteroids and from beneath the surfaces of moons. They came from satellites that everyone had assumed were communication relays. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a trap, and the trap was closing. Felvas watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being taken apart piece by piece. Not destroyed outright, but crippled, blinded, silenced. "Get us out of here," he ordered. "Emergency translation, now." His navigation officer shook his head. "Our translation drive is damaged, Commander. We cannot jump." "Then send a message to the main fleet. Warn them. Communications are down. The drones targeted our arrays first." Felvas stared at the screen in horror. This was not how war was supposed to work. The hegemony was supposed to arrive with overwhelming force and crush any resistance. The enemy was supposed to fight fair and die quickly. The humans were not fighting fair. They were not fighting like any species the hegemony had ever faced. They were fighting like predators, like hunters, like something that had learned warfare on a world where everything was trying to kill you all the time. A new contact appeared on the sensors. Something huge was emerging from behind the moon. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a hurricane a breeze. It was 15 kilometers long, covered in weapons that glowed with strange energy. Its hull was black and seemed to absorb light itself. "What is that?" someone whispered. The ship's name was painted on its side, in letters large enough to read from 1,000 kilometers away. UNSS Wrath of Terra. A communication signal forced its way through the jamming. A human face appeared on the view screen. It was a woman with gray hair and eyes like ice. Felvas recognized her from old intelligence files. Sarah Chen. The human who had smiled while paying tribute. The human who had said peace was worth any price. She was smiling now too, but it was not the smile of a victim. It was the smile of a predator that had finally caught its prey. "Commander Felvas," she said, "welcome to the Sol System. I hope you enjoy your stay. It will be permanent." "You cannot do this," Felvas stammered. "The main fleet will avenge us. 12,000 ships." "Yes," Chen agreed. 12,000 ships. We have been counting them. We know exactly how many are coming, and exactly when they will arrive, and exactly what routes they will take." She leaned forward. "You had 50 years to study us, Commander. Did you think we were not studying you? Did you think we were paying tribute out of fear? We were buying time and information, and you gave us both. The Wrath of Terra opened fire. A beam of energy that should not have been possible cut through a hegemony battleship like it was made of paper. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. 50 years ago, you came to our world and demanded submission, Chen continued. We gave it to you, not because we were weak, because we were smart. Every tribute payment bought us another month to build. Every insult we endured taught us more about your psychology. Every territory we surrendered was territory we did not need. More human ships were emerging now, hundreds of them. They had been hiding everywhere, in the clouds of Venus, in bases buried deep beneath the surface of Mercury. You looked at our silence and saw fear, Chen said. You should have seen patience. Felvos tried to respond, but his voice would not work. His flagship was surrounded now. His fleet was crippled. His 300 warships had been reduced to floating debris in less than 2 hours. The last thing he heard before his ship went dark was Chen's final message. Tell the main fleet what you saw here today. Tell them what happens when you declare war on Deathworlders. Tell them we are coming. Then there was only silence. In 93 minutes, the entire Vanguard fleet had been captured or destroyed. Not a single human ship was lost. The trap had worked perfectly. Supreme Commander Velkrath refused to believe the reports. He sat in his command throne aboard the hegemony's greatest battleship, the Divine Conquest, and read the scattered transmissions that had escaped from the Sol system. 300 ships destroyed in less than 2 hours. Hidden weapons, impossible technology, human soldiers that fought like demons. Lies, he muttered. Exaggerations. The humans are trying to frighten us. His advisors exchanged nervous glances, but said nothing. No one wanted to be the one to suggest that perhaps the reports were true. No one wanted to face Velkraft's anger. The main fleet continued toward human space. 10,000 warships, the largest force the hegemony had assembled in 3 centuries. They would crush Earth and its colonies, and the reports from the Sol system would be forgotten. History was written by the victors, and the hegemony always won. They reached the Proxima Centauri system 2 weeks later. This was humanity's first colony, established a century ago. 4 billion humans lived on the planet they called New Eden. Velkrath intended to make an example of them. The fleet translated into normal space and immediately raised shields. Velkrath was not taking any chances. If the humans had hidden weapons in their home system, they might have hidden them here too. But he saw no ambush, no hidden fleet. Just a single planet orbiting a red star, surrounded by orbital stations and civilian ships. Scan for threats, he ordered. Scanning, replied his sensor officer. I am detecting human military vessels approaching from the planet. Approximately 2,000 ships. Velkrath smiled. 2,000 against 10,000. Finally a proper battle. Move to intercept. Standard attack formation. The hegemony fleet spread out like a great net, ready to catch and crush the human defenders. Their weapons charged, their crews prepared for the slaughter they had been promised. Then the Leviathans arrived. They did not come from the planet. They came from deep space, from directions that the hegemony fleet was not watching. They had been waiting in the dark between stars, running on minimal power, completely invisible to sensors. The UNSS Wrath of Terra led them. Behind it came a dozen more ships of similar size, each one named after something terrible from human history. Wrath of Terra, Fury of Soul, Vengeance, Retribution, Hammer of God. They were black as the void, and covered in weapons that pulsed with strange light. But they were not alone. Thousands of smaller ships accompanied them. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers filled with fighters, ships that had been built in secret, crewed by soldiers who had trained their whole lives for this moment. The human fleet was not 2,000 ships. It was over 8,000, and more were arriving every minute. Velkrath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where did they come from? Where did they hide all of this? No one answered him. There was no answer that made sense. The battle began. The hegemony fleet had the advantage of numbers, but the humans had the advantage of surprise and technology. The Leviathans opened fire, with weapons that the Valorians did not understand. Beams of energy that passed through shields like they were not there. Missiles that teleported past defensive fire. Kinetic rounds moving at speeds that should have been impossible. Hegemony ships began to die. Not one at a time, but in groups. A Leviathan would target a section of the enemy fleet, and that section would simply cease to exist. Velkrath screamed orders. Close the distance. We will fight them hand to hand. It was a desperate move, but the Supreme Commander had one hope left. The Valorians were larger than humans, stronger. Their soldiers were trained in close combat. If they could get onto the human ships, they could take them by force. The Hegemony assault craft launched, thousands of them, carrying elite soldiers toward the human vessels. They were fast and well-armored. Many of them made it through the defensive fire and clamped onto human hulls. The boarding parties cut through airlocks and rushed inside. They found hell waiting for them. The humans fought in conditions that no civilized species could survive. When the Valorians breached the outer sections, the humans simply vented the atmosphere. They continued fighting in hard vacuum, their soldiers wearing powered armor that let them survive without air. When the Valorians tried to use that tactic against them, flooding compartments with toxic gas, the humans kept fighting. They sealed their helmets and walked through the poison like it was nothing. When the Valorians fell back to secure positions, the humans pursued them through maintenance tunnels and crawl spaces. They came from every direction, attacking in coordinated strikes that overwhelmed defenders 3 times their number. And they did not stop. That was the worst part. The Valorians were used to enemies who retreated when injured, who surrendered when outmatched, who feared death. The humans did not retreat. They did not surrender. And if they feared death, they did not show it. Soldiers with wounds that should have killed them kept fighting. Officers who lost limbs continued giving orders. Entire squads sacrificed themselves to buy time for their comrades. On the Divine Conquest, a Valorian general stumbled onto the bridge with terror in his eyes. Supreme Commander, they are not normal. They take wounds that would kill any of us, and they keep fighting. One of them lost an arm and used the severed limb as a weapon. They are monsters. Velkrath grabbed a communication device. Human Commander, I demand to speak with you. The screen flickered. Sarah Chen appeared, sitting calmly on the bridge of the Wrath of Terra. Behind her, her crew worked efficiently, coordinating the destruction of the hegemony fleet. Supreme Commander, she said, how can I help you? What are you? Velkrath screamed. What kind of creatures are you? Chen smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not kind either. It was the smile of someone explaining something obvious to someone very stupid. We are Deathworlders, she said, simply. Did you forget what that means? She stood and walked toward the camera. Our world tried to kill us every single day. The gravity crushed us. The atmosphere burned us. The temperature froze us and roasted us. Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged us. Our own planet was our enemy, and we beat it. We conquered the thing that made us. Her voice grew harder. Do you know what it takes to survive a death world? Not strength, not speed, not size. It takes will. The absolute refusal to die. The determination to keep fighting, even when there is no hope. The ability to look at something that should kill you and say, not today. On the tactical display, another hegemony battleship exploded. You spent 50 years studying us, Chen continued, but you learned nothing. You saw us pay tribute and thought we were weak. You saw us smile and thought we were broken. You saw us avoid war and thought we were cowards. She shook her head. We were not avoiding war. We were preparing for it. Every tribute payment gave us another month. Every insult we endured taught us more about you. Every system we surrendered was a system we did not need to defend. Velcraft's flagship shuddered as something struck it. Warning alarms filled the bridge. You wanted to exterminate us, Chen said. You announced it to the galaxy. You gave us no choice but to fight. And now you are learning what happens when you corner a Death World species. We will destroy you, Velcraft snarled. Even if we lose this battle, the hegemony will never stop. We will hunt you to the end of the galaxy. Chen's smile faded. Her eyes became cold and hard. No, she said quietly. You will not. Because we are not going to just win this battle, Supreme Commander. We are going to win this war. And when we are done, the hegemony will be a memory. A warning. A story that other species tell their children about what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. The screen went dark. Velcraft looked at the tactical display. His fleet was dying. His soldiers were being slaughtered. His empire was crumbling. He had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. Instead, he had learned a lesson about Deathworlders. It was his last lesson. The war lasted 11 months. It could have ended sooner. Humanity's technology and tactics were so far ahead of the hegemony that the outcome was never in doubt. But Admiral Chen had been clear in her orders to the fleet. This was not just about winning. It was about making sure no one ever threatened humanity again. We do not want a peace treaty, she told her commanders. We want surrender, complete and unconditional. We want the galaxy to remember this war for 1,000 years. The human fleet swept through hegemony space like a storm. System after system fell. Fortress worlds that had stood for centuries were captured in days. The great Valorian navy, once the terror of 100 species, was reduced to scattered groups of ships fleeing in every direction. And everywhere humanity went, they found friends. The hegemony had conquered many species over the centuries. They had crushed rebellions and punished defiance. They had made slaves of billions and told themselves it was natural. The strong ruled the weak. That was the way of the universe. But humanity offered something different. At every world they captured, they made the same announcement. You are free. Join us or do not, but you will never be slaves again. Some species were suspicious. They had been betrayed before by those who promised freedom. But as word spread about how the humans treated prisoners, how they shared food and medicine and technology, the suspicions faded. Old rebellions sparked back to life. Conquered species rose up against their masters. The hegemony did not just face humanity. They faced everyone they had ever wronged. On the final day of the war, Admiral Chen stood in the throne room of the Valorian homeworld. The great crystal palace had been damaged in the fighting, but not destroyed. Chen had given specific orders about that. She wanted this place intact for what came next. Around her stood soldiers from a dozen species. Humans, of course, but also Kreth warriors who had fought the hegemony for centuries. Thin, graceful Malori, who had been enslaved for generations. Massive Gothrak, who had been used as living weapons by their Valorian masters. All of them wore the new insignia of the Galactic Alliance, created just months ago, but already spreading across the stars. Before Chen knelt the surviving leaders of the hegemony. Supreme Commander Velcraft was not among them. He had died on his flagship at the Battle of Proxima, refusing to surrender. But his replacement, a younger Valorian named Thelmara, knelt at the front of the group. Behind her were generals, admirals, governors, and officials who had once ruled half the galaxy. Now they waited to learn their fate. For 3,000 years, Chen said, her voice echoing through the great chamber. The Valorian hegemony has conquered and enslaved. You have destroyed cultures, an exterminated species. You have treated the galaxy as your property, and other beings as your toys. She walked among the kneeling Valorians, looking at each face. 50 years ago, you came to Earth and demanded tribute. We paid it. You demanded territory. We gave it. You demanded submission. We provided it. You looked at our compliance and saw weakness. You told yourselves that we were broken, that our world had crushed our spirit. She stopped in front of Thelmara. You were wrong. Shen turned to address everyone in the chamber, the Valorians and the Alliance members alike. We were never weak. Every tribute payment bought us time to build. Every territory we surrendered was territory we did not need. Every insult we endured taught us more about our enemies. We let you believe we were sheep, because that is what sheep do to survive among wolves. Her voice hardened. But we were never sheep. We were wolves pretending to be sheep. And when you finally showed your true intentions, when you declared your war of extinction, we stopped pretending. Thelmara looked up at her. What will you do with us? Will you exterminate us, as we plan to exterminate you? It was the question everyone wanted to ask. The hegemony had committed terrible crimes. Many in the Alliance wanted revenge. They wanted the Valorians to suffer as they had made others suffer. Shen shook her head. No, we are not like you. We did not fight this war for revenge or conquest. We fought because you gave us no choice. And now that we have won, we will show you something you never showed your victims. She looked around the chamber, at the representatives of species that had been freed. Mercy. The word caused murmurs throughout the room. Some voices were angry. Others were confused. The hegemony will pay for its crimes, Shen continued. Your military will be dissolved. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your leaders will face trial for their actions. Those found guilty will be punished according to law, not vengeance. She turned back to the Valorians. But your species will not be exterminated. Your world will not be cracked open for resources. Your people will be allowed to live and rebuild, as members of the Galactic Alliance if they choose. We will show you the mercy you never showed others. Not because you deserve it, but because that is who we are. Why? Thelmara asked. Why spare us after everything we have done? The war is a tired smile, the smile of someone who had fought a long war and wanted it to be over. Because hate is exhausting. Because revenge creates more enemies than it destroys. And because we humans learned something long ago on our death world. The strongest creatures are not always the ones who kill everything in their path. Sometimes the strongest creatures are the ones who know when to stop. She extended a hand to Thelmara. The war is over. You can take my hand and help build something new. Or you can refuse. And we will leave you here alone while the galaxy moves on without you. The choice is yours. Thelmara stared at the offered hand. In her culture, accepting help from an enemy was the greatest shame. It meant admitting defeat. It meant accepting that you were wrong about everything you believed. But her culture had led to this moment. Her culture had started a war it could not win. Her culture had almost destroyed her entire species. Perhaps it was time for a new culture. She took Chen's hand and stood. The Valorian people accept your terms, she said quietly. We will join your alliance. We will follow your laws. We will, she paused, struggling with the words, we will learn to be better. Chen nodded. That is all we ask. 1 year later, the Galactic Alliance held its first full assembly. Representatives from over 200 species gathered on a space station built specifically for the occasion. At the center of the Great Hall stood a monument, a simple stone pillar with words carved in 100 languages. The words were the same in every translation. We are the children of a death world. We survive not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the most stubborn. We looked at a universe that wanted us dead and said, not today. And when others threatened us with extinction, we reminded them of a simple truth. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. And those who mistake our mercy for fear do so at their own risk. Below the monument, a small plaque showed a picture of Earth, that tiny blue marble that had produced such strange and terrible creatures. Species who visited the monument often asked the human guides the same question. Were you ever afraid? When the hegemony announced their war, when their fleet came, were you afraid? The humans always gave the same answer, with the same quiet smile. Of course we were afraid. Fear is natural. Fear keeps you alive. But on a death world, you learn to do what needs to be done despite the fear. You learn that courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the face of fear. Then they would add, with a hint of something dangerous in their eyes, the hegemony thought fear would make us surrender. They did not understand that for Deathworlders, fear just makes us more focused, more determined, more patient. The guides would gesture at the bustling assembly hall, filled with free species building a new future together. They mistook our silence for weakness. They proclaimed war on creatures forged in the fires of a hostile world. And they learned, as others will learn if they forget, that humanity does not bluff. We do not threaten. We do not warn twice. A pause, a smile. We just wait. And when we finally move, we make sure we never have to wait again. Outside the station, among the stars that humanity had claimed as their own, the galaxy continued its slow dance. New alliances formed, old wounds healed. 1,000 species looked toward a future that was brighter than anything they had dared to imagine. And on Earth, in homes and schools and offices, humans went about their daily lives. They smiled at strangers and helped their neighbors and raised their children to be kind. But in every human heart, there remained a small, quiet thing, a memory of fire and ice and struggle, a readiness that never quite went away, because Deathworlders never forgot what they were, and they were always ready for the next storm. The end.